Meeting off and
Yes, thank you, Tanya. Welcome to the Climate Action Advisory Committee. Let's see. First off, do we want to do introductions, or does everyone have a pretty good sense of who we are, or should we go down the list?
I would say just go down the list for the record.
Okay. You got it. So just going down by jurisdiction, from Cloverdale, I do not see anyone. From Katati,
Here.
we have Judith. From Healdsburg, do not see anyone. From Petaluma,
Here.
Beverly. From Rohnert Park, we have Julie.
I'm here and Julie's here. Shirley and Julie.
Perfect. Excellent, thank you. And Santa Rosa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Conway, representing Santa Rosa.
Thank you, Kevin. And Sebastopol.
That's me, and for Sebastopol.
Sonoma.
Yeah, I'm Matt Metzler from the city of Sonoma.
Thank you, Matt. In the town of
Hey.
Windsor.
I think we also have David Leland.
Yeah, I'm
But
here
we
too.
have
I'm
others
sorry.
from Sonoma.
Oh,
I
I'm
was
sorry,
on-
David.
I was on mute.
Oh, apologies.
Christopher from Windsor.
Michelle, also from Windsor. Hello.
Thank you. And the county of Sonoma.
Hi, Tom Conlon, District 1.
And let's see, County of Sonoma, David Rabbit's district. And County of Sonoma, Hopkins district.
Very few get.
Thanks, Carrie.
And I also saw Jane join us for Cloverdale. So we do have a Cloverdale rep here.
Excellent. Moving to our next item. Drew, do we have any public comments in advance of the rest of the meeting items?
I did not receive any pre-submitted public comments.
Thank you. And then we will move to approval of the January 14th meeting notes. Everyone's had a chance to review those.
I'll move to approve the minutes. And thank you, Drew, for preparing those.
I'll second.
Excellent. So those are approved. Next item on the agenda is the Sonoma climate. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joshua.
Yes, sorry to interject. I just noticed in the spreadsheet there that's down below, they're still listing Stephen Pierce as a representative from Sebastopol. That's no longer true. I'm the representative from Sebastopol, and I was at the last meeting on the 14th. So not sure how important that is that that's recorded. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you. We will get that updated.
I will then amend my motion
Drew, were there?
to approve the minutes with that correction.
Second.
Thank you. Andrew, were there any public comments on the meeting minutes?
I did not receive pre-submitted comments on the minutes.
Excellent. Moving forward to item number 4, the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Call to Action. This is an event, virtual webinar that will be happening on Monday, April 11th. Hopefully you've started to see some either in our emails, invites, social media, or other outreach. Hopefully you're all aware of that, and hopefully you can attend. This is going to occur at 5:30 on Monday, April 11th. Basically, it's an extension of our standard SCTA RCPA board meeting. We'll have a very brief board meeting that just includes action items, and then we'll proceed to an approximately 1 hour webinar that's going to detail kind of the next steps. It's basically a kickoff to starting to implement the Sonoma climate mobilization and garner support for future funding efforts, and also helping to define people's vision of a climate resilient Sonoma County. So the goal of this will really be to get people to fill out a survey, to get their information, to contact them for future mobilization. And this will also be conducted in English and Spanish, with Spanish slides and live interpretation in Spanish as well. And we hope you can attend. Please, yeah, if you need help getting the invitation or the meeting or anything like that, please reach out. But it was in the RCPA newsletter that went out this morning, was certainly mentioned in that. Tanya, do you have anything to add regarding the mobilization workshop, the call to action?
Sure. So thank you, Ross. And yes, we definitely would appreciate all of your help in getting the word out to get as many folks there as possible. And then we're also planning, so Monday is the kickoff, and then following that, we are planning to take the show on the road, if you will. And so we would love to hear from all of you if you have groups that you'd like us to come present to. Any thoughts in terms of additional outreach or groups we should be meeting with. We would very much appreciate your inputs and help in getting those presentations lined up. We have an ad hoc committee of our board that has been guiding the work on this, and part of what we're working towards is developing additional funding to support the climate work. And so our board is very interested in supporting that. And we have a number of board members who are interested in helping to give presentations. So we're trying to get a good schedule of groups set up for them to go present to. And of course, staff is always available as well. So that's what I would add to that, Ross. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And the main, on our website, under the calendar, it is the same link as the April 11th board meeting. That is the same item, and that again happens at 5:30. Tom Conlon.
Thank you. I appreciate that outreach effort. And I was curious if there's a community-based organization helping with recruiting for the 5:30 Monday event in Spanish in particular, or is that going out through more traditional channels?
Well, we assembled a list initially that does include a number of CBOs and some that are primarily for the Spanish-speaking community. So we've got some RSVPs. We really hope we have some good representation from that community. And the other thing is we will be recording the meeting in Spanish as well. So that will be available too for future use for both languages. Any other questions on the April 11th webinar? Any public comment, Drew? All right. Moving forward, RCPA policy priorities for this year. Is that BC? We'll be presenting that?
That's Ross. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, excellent. Well, thank you. So I wanted to let everybody know I'm going to give a short presentation talking through our priority projects that Tanya and I are going to be focused on over the upcoming months. This is going to be a recap of, I believe at our last meeting, we brought a summary of all of these for review, and we got some comments at that meeting, and then took that and received approval from our RCPA board. And now Tanya and I are kind of crunching away on a lot of this work. And so we wanted to give an update on the work we have done, the timeline for our next 3 to 6 months, or actually it's kind of through the end of the year, and then receive any comments or any feedback from members of the committee. So let me share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so hopefully that is visible, and I'm going to make one last change. I'm going to try to make one last change. Okay, thanks for your patience, everybody. So here we go. So on this first slide here is an overview of the strategies that were identified, the initiatives and the strategies that have been identified in our climate mobilization strategy that was adopted by our board at the beginning of 2021. So this list should be fairly familiar to the committee. And this is our overarching list of which all of our other activities fall underneath. It's really based around these six different initiative areas: decarbonization, on building energy, transportation, solid waste, work on carbon sequestration, work on resilience and adaptation, and then to round it out, work on equity and community engagement. So here's an overview of the the updates that I wanted to provide, and kind of going to step through these one by one. I think I'd like to go through the whole presentation, and then we can come back at the end for any questions. And absolutely, if there's anything I say where there's kind of questions that need to be asked on the spot, please just go ahead and interrupt me, especially if there's something that's unclear. But this kind of gives a snapshot of all of the information that's available, or all the information I'll go through. And then Drew is going to post this presentation shortly after the meeting today, so that members of the committee can use it as a reference. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is work that we are undertaking that kind of underlies all the project work on the climate mobilization strategy. And this is related to our greenhouse gas inventory update that the RCPA puts together approximately every 2 years. So that's every 2 or 3 years. And we are currently working to assemble the data for the using 2020 data. So we have worked through and have preliminary numbers for all of the building energy emissions, and are now working through on transportation, solid waste, and water and wastewater. Fertilizer and livestock will be the last one that we complete, but I'm currently working right now on those other 3. Our goal is to have a draft report completed in late May to early June, so that we could then present to our board on at the July board meeting. So that work is ongoing. It's kind of and I think it's at this point it's a lot of data collection and a lot of calculations that are being done behind the scenes. Not a lot to report on that specifically, other than it's kind of it underlies, I think, all of the other work that we're doing. Stepping into the work of the mobilization strategy specifically, we had identified 6 kind of priority initiatives or priority projects for this upcoming year. The first one that we've been working on quite extensively for a couple of months already has been assembling information around energy reach codes and providing that information to the jurisdictions, any of the local jurisdictions who may want to adopt, either renew their existing electric reach codes or adopt new ones, at which the earliest possible date would be January 1st of 2023. That would then be tied in with the new building code that comes online, that basically is updated every 3 years. So for this project, we've been working very closely with the Bay Area Regional Energy Network and with the staff at the county's Energy and Sustainability Division. There's an incredible number of resources that are being made available at both the state and local level for jurisdictions that want to evaluate or consider reach codes. Currently, the cities of Santa Rosa, Healdsburg, and Petaluma currently have reach codes in place around building energy, both Santa Rosa and Healdsburg will need to readopt those reach codes before the end of the year if they would like them to stay in effect. The Petaluma reach code was adopted in such a way that it does not need to be, it is a natural gas ban that does not need to be renewed every 3 years. And we are then going to be, this topic will actually be a focus for the group discussion at the next planning advisory committee that's in approximately 2 weeks, where we'll be touching base with a number of the planning directors for all of the cities and with the county to attempt to identify which other jurisdictions are looking to move forward with electric reach codes and what support that we could, additional support we could provide for them. So that that work is ongoing. Staying with building energy, as soon as we kind of move forward with the reach codes, our next, the reach codes I was just mentioning really all apply to new construction. That's a key distinction I forgot to add. Once we kind of really wrap up and move onward from that and pass that information to the jurisdictions, we really want to focus in on existing buildings and a number of the same sorts of strategies, but these are really in line to really, there's a whole different kind of mechanism that needs to be used, really thinking about the existing buildings that exist, working with homeowners. And again, this will be really a partnership effort that I think will rely a lot on the resources available through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, BayREN, as well as through the county's Energy and Sustainability Division. I'm also watching very closely and reviewing a report for strategy document that was released by the city of Berkeley, which is their existing buildings electrification strategy. I'm very much hoping that we can parrot that document and really use that as a basis for a strategy.
I see, we can't hear you. Oh, kind of cut out there for a minute.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So I'll back up just a second. I've been looking at the document very closely from the document with the from the city of city of Berkeley on their building energy electrification strategy. And one of the key aspects of that document that I'm very interested in is looking at, they've built in a number, they call them equity guardrails, but it's a deep integration of social equity concerns, social equity considerations really into the document for thinking about as we move through and attempt to upgrade, do a major upgrade on the entire building stock throughout the county. How does that, how can that be done equitably? And how can it be done so it's not kind of an undue economic burden on a number of households and individuals? It's a tough nut to crack, but I think that there's a lot for us to work with within the city of Berkeley's document. That work is also being done in parallel. There's similar work being done, city of Oakland, city of San Jose, and a couple of other cities that I'm watching fairly carefully, hoping that we can pull those documents and use those as a basis for our work here. Switching to transportation, this next one is this will be a collaborative effort working with our colleagues here at the Transportation Authority, working with our SCTA colleagues. And this is going to be looking at the overlap of our Sonoma County mobilization strategy, which has been adopted by our board, along with the comprehensive transportation plan, also adopted by the board, the newly adopted Vision Zero action plan, and then the upcoming countywide active transportation plan. Really looking at all of these existing transportation planning documents that have been kind of done through this office, through SCTA, looking at the overlap with our climate work and really trying to, I think those existing planning documents, those are the existing vehicles of where we need to lend our support as opposed to reinventing that information and just parroting it back through an RCPA lens. I think this is where we're hoping to really kind of take our multiple documents and really stitch them together. So we have a unified kind of, part of this is a unified messaging and part of it is a unified focus on how our priorities and our projects fit together. There's also, I also want to notice on this, Also need to figure out how this fits in, but I've been reviewing the work that was done several years ago, a little bit older, that was on the Shift Sonoma County plan. And that was really focused. There was two parts of that plan talking about kind of fuel shift of moving to electric vehicles, and then talking about mode shift of getting people out of cars. And so I think there's a lot of material in that as well that we need to pull forward and make sure that that's integrated into our current thinking and our current work. Again, sticking with transportation, and this is an effort where Tanya's going to be taking the lead on this one, but this is really looking at the electric vehicle adoption and into additional installation of EV chargers throughout the county and in the local jurisdictions. We're going to be evaluating the use of EV-ready reach codes and attempting to work with all the jurisdictions, with all of our members and partners, to try to identify what can be done at with their municipal ordinances that would encourage the reach code adoption of reach codes to encourage additional chargers, the installation of additional chargers. On this, we've also Tanya recently reinvigorated or recalled to order the local government electric vehicle partnership, which had been meeting several years ago, as a kind of a vehicle to use for our kind of discussion. It's really, those are the fleet managers, representatives from a number of the fleet managers and fleet divisions from a number of the local jurisdictions. So that is work that's kind of the first transportation item was really around the mode shift. How do we make how do we get people out of their cars? This piece of it is really around how do we, for people that are continuing to drive, how do we shift those cars to electric vehicles? Tied in with that, this is not identified as a priority by the board this year in our recent ones that were just updated, but I wanted to give a brief update on work that has started last year and has continued to move forward. Thought the committee would be interested in a snapshot here of the work by local jurisdictions to adopt bans on the construction of new gas stations. And this shows here, this list here is my understanding of the kind of where all the jurisdictions are currently sitting on this effort. City of Petaluma and City of Roanoke Park have both passed their permanent gas station bans. City of, Town of Windsor and, well, I know that City of Santa Rosa, Town of Windsor, and City of Sebastopol are all currently working on their ordinances and are bringing those, have plans to bring those to their local, to their city councils. City of Cotati is working on an ordinance behind the scenes, have not set a date yet for their for a hearing on that. And then our next step is to circle back with the other jurisdictions where I have here no action taken yet, and to identify kind of what are the barriers they may be facing, and whether there's interest from their councils on moving forward. At least identify those reasons on why they haven't moved forward yet. I guess I should also point out, this is an effort that even though RCPA is providing an incredible amount of support to the jurisdictions kind of on a staff level, I think really the weight on this is really coming from a community organization known as the Coalition Against the Construction of New Gas Stations, CONGAS. And I just have to call out the fact that this is, in my mind, is a great example of how we here at RCPA can work with jurisdictional staff and really providing those staff level resources and those staff level conversations, but that it often takes a dedicated community or a community group out there who's going to be making those phone calls and showing up to meetings and speaking publicly about that. So wanted to at least give my acknowledgement to that group with CONGAS and the work that they're doing to move this forward. See a couple last updates here, and then we'll kind of open it up for some questions. This is a project here focused on identifying, looking at carbon sequestration potential for urban forestry, urban forest and urban trees. This is actually, and we have a kickoff meeting later on this afternoon where we're going to be meeting with a graduate student researcher that's actually based out of Colorado, who we have been connected with through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. That's a nationwide organization that RCPA participates with. And we have the opportunity to work with this graduate student who is going to be taking some of the materials that were originally created by Petaluma Relief, the kind of tree protection group that's a community-based group that's based in Petaluma, and take some of the materials that they have started and really try to expand upon those. This will be looking at collecting all of the tree protection ordinances and urban forest management plans that we can from all local jurisdictions, comparing those against each other and comparing those against kind of a national model of tree protection ordinances so that we can make that analysis available back to the local jurisdictions so that when they do update their ordinance, they have kind of model language that we can use. We know of a couple of jurisdictions that are on the verge or interested in doing updates. We know that some of the jurisdictions, this may not actually be on their current workload list, but we want to have those materials available for them. So this would be really looking at kind of what are all the existing ordinances and where are their strengths and weaknesses, and looking for opportunities for consistency across the local jurisdictions, across the county, if possible. This was one piece. The Petaluma group, their analysis that they did through happenstance actually compared a lot of the Marin County ordinances, and that was it was interesting to see in the work that they've done how different all of the ordinances are, and how anyone working on tree issues within a county landscape actually needs to be aware of all the different intricacies of all of these different tree protection ordinances. So if there is space for consistency over time, that would be an incredible outcome from this. So I'm excited to be getting the graduate student assistance and kind of looking forward to that kickoff meeting later today. Last one I wanted to highlight here, last major one I wanted to highlight is work here on looking at the general plan updates that are being accomplished by a number or being undertaken by a number of the local jurisdictions. We have hoped to integrate ourselves into that work a bit, identify and keep track of what jurisdictions are updating their general plans, which are the chapters they're working on updates, and what are some of the kind of top level climate and equity considerations that could and should be integrated into those documents. So this is work that I have made. It's a little bit further down on the priority list, a little bit further down on kind of the workload list, but I think there's potential here for us to kind of identify key topics, identify key considerations that really should be included, and then work with the local planners, the jurisdictions at the different cities and the county to try to integrate those topics more into the general plans. Final slide here for the presentation. It's a bit busy, but I wanted to give, this is a little bit of a timeline showing work that we are undertaking over the next 3 quarters. And it's really, you can, at the top of the list, starting at the upper corner, is really our work working on the greenhouse gas inventory. That will result in the document, in the report being released later on this summer. In the yellow section, you can see all of the work that we're doing on building energy and transportation. Topics that I highlighted already. In the green, we have the tree protection ordinances and a lot of the work that we're doing there on carbon sequestration. And then down at the bottom, we have the kind of the work that we're doing on equity integration with looking at the general plans. And you'll also see a reference there to adopting the SCTA RCPA equity statement. So that is something that we'll be discussing a little bit more in depth with the next presentation. once I wrap up, I believe. So that is kind of an overview of what we are carrying here and moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open things back up to ask some questions, answer any questions, or see if there's any comments. Thank you, everyone.
Looks like Matt Metzler has a question.
Yeah, I have a question or a comment regarding EV charging stations and the transportation infrastructure. I'm just curious about if other people in other jurisdictions have this issue. In the city of Sonoma, we have in the last year or two, a total of 10 new EV charging stations, which is great. However, I drive a 2019 Nissan Leaf, which is one of the most common EVs out there on the road today. And of those 10 new charging stations, only one is a J1772 charging port. The others are Tesla only. Tesla installed 6 charging stations. One of them is a J1772, but most people, it looks like a Tesla station. You wouldn't even know that you can charge a non-Tesla car there. The others were paid for by the Volkswagen emissions lawsuit settlement, and they are a different type of plug doesn't work on a Chevy Bolt or a Nissan Leaf. It's a CCS1 combo plug, and installing new charging stations that are not universally usable by all EVs is counterproductive. There's also issues with charging stations not working. So that's something that needs to be part of the strategy for EV charging stations, is making sure that they are compatible with all or most EVs, not only the CCS ones that were paid for by the Volkswagen settlement work on the newer European Jaguar and Volkswagen EVs, but they don't. It's a different plug for the Nissan Leaf or Chevy Bolt. So that's something everybody needs to be aware of.
And Shirley Johnson had a question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, PC. And just a thing on the EV charging, that's a fast DC CCS. That's what that is. You won't see a 1772 on the fast DC. So I drive a BMW, and that's the plug-in that I have. I actually have a 1772 plug-in too. They're all it incorporates both of those. So anyway, just a FYI. So I wanted to address the transportation. I was at the Economic Development Board conference yesterday, and the speaker brought up something that is blows my mind. He isn't, this was the speaker from Berkeley, the economist and stuff like that, our guest speaker. Anyway, he brought up the point of public transit, like buses, and Ubers and Lyft. Yay! So I thought that was very interesting. I just want to give a plug for that. Like, what are we going to do when we have professionals out there that are have that opinion? Thank you.
And Steve Bertelbaugh.
Yes, thanks. That was a very good overview. I am interested in the issue of embodied carbon in the electric vehicles, and the solution that I think is developing is that we need to get people driving the smart car size vehicle rather than the Teslas. Because the weight of the battery, the weight of the vehicle has a big impact on how much you really gain by shifting to an electric vehicle. So I hope we will build that into our program and try to get people into small cars, not big ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And just in time, we have Kevin Conway.
Yes, thank you. It was just in time. I have a little CCI puppy that's crying and I gave it some peanut butter hoping that it won't interrupt me here. Thank you, VC, for the report. I'm glad that, there will be some focus on existing construction. I was just reading today that the concentration of methane jumped in 2021 by the largest amount since measurements began 40 years ago. So I am hoping that while we are working on all of the reach codes and ordinances around new construction, that something can be done in tandem with that, maybe around the idea of incentives to get people to, get heat pump water heaters and mini split heat pumps and induction stoves and electric fireplaces and that sort of thing, because the problem is getting much worse around methane. The other thing I wanted to ask, and I have a few things, but one was mentioned that countywide active transportation plan now has funding. And I wondered how much funding and where that is going to be going. And then I think that Santa Rosa, because it's a charter city, is able to make ordinances that do supersede the state constitution because of its status as a charter city. So I would hope that maybe that being the case, it could grease the skids for some of the things that could be looked at. Lastly, Santa Rosa, besides the general plan updates that are going on, Santa Rosa is renewing and reviewing its charter as a charter city. And this committee has been meeting, and unfortunately, nobody's attending these meetings. I have zoomed into two of them. They had one in the library where you couldn't zoom in. You had to go there in person. But doesn't seem to me, maybe somebody knows more than I do about this process, but it's renewed every 10 years or reviewed every 10 years. And I'm asking, can't we grease the skids a little bit now that we have this crisis with the climate? Does it really have to be 10 years before we can get in and review and renew some of the provisions in that charter? For example, there should be something in there, I would think, that would allow for any ordinance suggestion related to climate, that it could follow a different pathway, some kind of a pathway that would move faster than the speed of government and the way things are normally happen. So anyway, those are my thoughts and my questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to express them.
Thank you, Kevin. Michelle Gervais.
Hi, thank you. Great presentation. I have a steep learning curve, but I'm really appreciating it all. Quick question is more of a procedural one. I'm just, there's a new regional coordinator at the town of Windsor, and she and I are both learning about all of the work you're doing and wondering how your work gets communicated to the other jurisdictions, if it's through us, if you have your own staff level coordination. Just like to see everybody pulling on the oar at the same time, at the same rhythm. And I see your work plan, and I'd love to make sure that our town is coordinated with that and having ready for you what you would like at the right times.
I'll go ahead and jump in really quick on that one. So we host a members and partners meeting every other month, in which all the jurisdictions, all the cities of Town of Windsor and the county are invited to participate. A number of the planning directors also participate on the planning advisory committee, of which is kind of our official kind of, I think, communications with them. We're then always available and open to kind of answer just any phone calls or anything that comes up. I do think that that's a relationship between kind of that communication relationship can be strengthened. But at least we do have, I think at this, our members and partners meeting and our kind of planning advisory committee meetings are the main two area bodies or the main two pathways that I've been using. And I don't know if there's anyone else, Tanya, or anyone else that wants to kind of highlight other ways in which we're working with the city staff.
I would just add BC, sometimes we'll form working groups on specific topics like the group you pulled together for the gas station ban. But I would agree that the members and partners is really the ongoing regular method of connection.
So thank you. And a quick follow-up. Do they have your work plan then that you just showed toward the end of your slides with what you're doing through July and what your each quarter, what your goals were?
They don't have access to that slide yet because it just got completed yesterday, but it will be presented to the Planning Advisory Committee at their next meeting. And I can make that, I actually want to update and make some changes to that slide, but I would like that to become a kind of one of our common slides that is part of our our regular communication, so that it's always embedded as part of our here's our work plan, here's our timeline for the next 9 to 12 months.
Okay, thank you. That's terrific. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And Tom Conlon.
Thanks, BC. That's a great update and very exciting to see all these different initiatives starting to come together. And congratulations too to Dana and the rest of the team on that countywide active transportation plan. I underscore Kevin's concerns about wanting to have a sense of how we in the community can help advance that plan, make sure it's as effective and successful as possible. So we'll be eager to hear how you're rolling that out. And I also wanted to ask a specific question about the existing protection of existing carbon stocks. It sounds like the focus is kind of jurisdiction driven and the local tree protection ordinances, and that does make some sense. I like the idea of coordination. However, we have a lot of small cities who don't have a lot of trees, to be honest, and it would be, I think, it would be misguided to spend too much of our attention on the small jurisdictions and miss some of the big sequestration opportunities, perhaps out in the unincorporated county. So to guide that, it would be helpful to start with some kind of assessment of the scope of the carbon stocks in each of the jurisdictions, and then use that to inform the rollout of that strategy. So again, great to see all this happening. So thanks for the update.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we have Carrie Fugit.
It was perfect because I was very similar path to Tom. So very much on board. I just first want to say thank you to the whole team in BC. It was a fantastic update. Really excited about some of the ideas from outside the area, from the city of Berkeley, for example, around equity guardrails. Also agree with Kevin on investing in existing buildings and finding innovative ways to support renters from a health perspective on this upgrades and replacements priority. So really excited, appreciate your outside research around that. And then also along with Tom, it seems like there's the comprehensive tree ordinance update in the unincorporated areas has stalled a bit. And so I think encouraging Permit Sonoma to move that forward and keeping light and attention and, asking regularly how this is going and encouraging that to move forward would be a better use of time than urban areas. Also because out of sight, out of mind, there's a lot more civic volunteer engagement in the urban area, whereas getting attention into the hundreds of acres, that are at risk in Cloverdale and kind of out of sight is where government can bring a lot of value because you are aware of what's going on out there, more so than folks in the urban area might know. And then also in the EV partnership, it's awesome to be building out the infrastructure for charging, and just a little call to still keep in mind helping folks get an electric car in the first place, that there's still a lot of folks who don't even have the car. So making sure we're not leaving those folks behind in the focus of just the infrastructure, but that is important. for making it easier to have that card too. So, and in terms of the carbon assessment that Tom referred to, I do believe that Ag and Open Space has done some of that work, so it might be worthwhile talking to them. I'll put in the chat a plan that they've made a while back, but there is some work around a carbon inventory that had been done there.
Thank you, Carrie. Next, we have Jane Elias.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, BC. And going back to Michelle's question about the outreach that RCPA is doing, I seem to recall you were also doing some presentations to city and town councils, and I think it was about the mobilization strategy, but just wanted to clarify and find out also what that's looking like in schedules. Who have you been able to present to? And are there any others on the calendar in the near future?
Let's see. So as the mobilization strategy was being developed and adopted, Tanya presented to a number of the cities and the counties kind of through that adoption process. And that was a little while ago. For the second half of last year and the first part of this year, the presentations that I've given to local city councils have been really focused on the Bayren work and specifically on the building electrification work, and really focused on the customer facing programs that we're working with the county's energy and sustainability division on. So the most recent presentations that I've been given have really been that have been specifically tailored to local jurisdictions, has been on the Bayren programs. So I think that there's an opportunity there for us to, and I think especially looking at the call to action and moving forward with next steps and the funding, this is a very ripe time for us to develop those speaking points and kind of figure out what would be that next step presentation that would hit these points. With that, maybe I can pass it to Tanya again for a little bit of because you had given a number of those earlier jurisdiction presentations, and may have actually been given some recently that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I don't think so. So good response, BC. And I would just echo what you said about, I think this highlights a good opportunity that we have to work with our directors and certainly make sure that they're aware that we are ready and willing to come and give presentations on the mobilization strategy, Bayren, or really tailor things to the councils and the supervisors' interests. So definitely want to do more of that. And thank you for bringing that up for us to kind of think about how we can move that forward. So.
And Dana.
Thanks, Ross. I could just speak briefly to the questions that came up from Tom and Kevin about the active transportation plan. So thank you. We are very excited that we were just awarded, found out on Monday that we were awarded the grant from Caltrans. And essentially the grant is to develop a countywide active transportation plan and assist 6 of the jurisdictions within Sonoma County is what was in our scope to develop their local jurisdiction level active transportation plans. Those local jurisdiction level plans will be under the umbrella of the countywide active transportation plan. And so essentially the documents exist together and on their own. This will be an update of the 2014 bicycle and pedestrian master plan that we did for as a countywide and local updates as well. So kind of the same format there. So this is federal funding, and we do go through a Caltrans process to receive the funding. We expect to have the funding obligated and available to start using this fall. I believe around October. And there is a little over $500,000 in funding that we received awarded from Caltrans. We will be facilitating the plan through our regular countywide bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee that meets on the 4th Tuesday every other month. And we can, certainly provide updates to this group as well as we move forward.
Thank you, Dana. Do we have any other comments? David Leland.
Hi, thanks. I can't find my raise hand function, so thanks for keeping your eyes out there. So I had a question that also relates to funding, and that is whether the RCPA is tracking infrastructure funds from the recently passed federal legislation, and whether I know that there's supposed to be a lot of money in there, for example, for building efficiency stuff, and hoping that y'all are tracking that and gathering up dollars where that's possible.
I think just to respond really quickly, I know that there's an incredible amount of tracking that's being done by SCTA staff focused on the transportation funding that's available. There's also a huge amount of funding on climate adaptation and resilience that I have been tracking. At this point though, and I don't have it. I am not tracking those funding pots though on a regular daily kind of basis as it evolves. But that is a good suggestion for us to kind of figure out how to keep the kind of our eyes on what that pipeline looks like, and then to figure out, in a lot of ways, I think our role is to direct those. If we're not the appropriate body to apply for the funds, figure out how to make sure that our jurisdictional partners kind of know about those and encourage them to apply directly. So let me take that comment back and give that some thought. So figure out how we can kind of stay more up to date on really that work.
Great, thanks, BC.
And Drew, do we have any public comment on the item?
There was no pre-submitted public comment on this item.
Thank you. Moving to the next item, the SCTA RCPA draft equity statement. Tanya, are you going to speak on that?
Yes, I am. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Hang on one second. Sorry, my computer is not letting me share. I think, I just upgraded my software, and let me see if I can figure out how to let it give me permission.
I could share as well if
yeah, actually,
you just want to
if you
show
don't mind
the
sharing, that
equity
would be
statement.
great, Ross. Yeah.
Yeah, one
That's what I get for updating my Mac. Yeah, the presentation file should be in the
yeah,
you see it there?
right there. Make sure this. Let's see, is that visible to everyone? The draft state?
Yes.
Yep. Great. All right, so let me start with just a little bit of background. So as some of you may recall, when we developed our climate mobilization strategy, we went through a process of having some external consultants evaluate it from an equity standpoint, and they provided some really excellent feedback for us. And that kind of started us on a path of exploring how, as an overall agency, SCTA and RCPA, we could strengthen our work around equity. And so we've been working with a consulting firm, Equity First Consulting, over the last number of months to do some internal staff training, as well as develop an equity statement. And the purpose of this statement is really to help guide our work in transportation and climate planning, recognizing the diverse needs within our community. We see this statement as a really important way of demonstrating our commitment to advancing equity and anti-racism in our transportation and climate plans, and also as a way to both hold ourselves accountable as well as for the public at large to check in and see if we are living up to the commitments that we have documented in this statement. So we've been going through a process of drafting this statement with the help of Equity First. We've started reviewing it with advisory committees. So we reviewed recently with the SCTA Citizens Advisory Committee, and now reviewing with all of you. And we've also conducted an equity listening session where we invited representatives from community-based organizations that are working with communities like the Latinx community, lower income communities, and invited them to come and share their perspectives on this statement. And so we also wanted to review this here with you today. So I think what I'll do is maybe read the statement myself so we can kind of ground ourselves in the statement, and then we'll open it up. I'll share a few thoughts or words about our next steps and then open it up for your questions and feedback. So our statement reads, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority recognize that communities of color and low-income communities are disproportionately impacted by environmental and economic inequities. SCTA and RCPA recognize a responsibility to serve these communities more fully in terms of mobility, climate impacts, and access to housing. In order to collaborate meaningfully with partners who are also dedicated to transformative change, we must design policies that address inequities. The mission of SCTA and RCPA is to work together as a collaborative agency of the cities and county of Sonoma to maintain and improve our transportation network and address climate change by prioritizing, coordinating, and maximizing available funding, and to provide comprehensive countywide planning while recognizing the diverse needs within our county. SCTA and RCPA are committed to advancing equity and anti-racism in transportation and climate plans by integrating them into our practices, processes, plans, and decisions. To that end, SCTA and RCPA commit to community engagement practices that recognize and incorporate regular input from a diverse set of residents, including people who are most impacted by systemic inequities. To attract, recruit, and retain a diverse set of people for our staff, consultants, and advisory committees to more effectively represent the entirety of our community. To create equity criteria to incorporate into funding formulas, to hold ourselves accountable by reporting regularly to our board of directors and to the public on our progress as we work to fulfill the commitments made here, and to consider this a living document, using it as a guide for decision-making and revisiting and refining it regularly in conjunction with the community we serve to ensure that it remains relevant, viable, and forward-looking. And also just to point out that we've included as footnotes to our statement are the definitions that we are adopting or proposing to use for equity and anti-racism. So then lastly, in terms of our next steps, I mentioned that we've been reviewing it with our various committees. So we will be summarizing all of the feedback that we've received from these various sessions, and then presenting this draft statement along with a summary of the feedback received to our board on May 9th, so the May board meeting, and then taking their feedback, comments, and direction, and making any revisions that, based on the board direction to the statement, and then bringing it back for final review and adoption on June 13th, so the June board meeting. So with that, I will stop and ask if there are any questions, and certainly welcome your feedback and inputs on the statement. Yes, Tom.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look at this prior to its presentation at the Community Advisory Committee meeting, but I have now given it some thought, and I know it's tough to put these things together, so I appreciate all the work that's gone into this so far. Three kind of things emerged for me looking it over. One is that there's a bit of a, and this is probably time related or just, but this statement presents a gap between the mission of SCTA in that this is even needed. So I would argue that if equity is at the center, we should probably have the mission statement reflecting that a little bit more. So that's a bigger process than just this document, but I want to start there, and maybe it's not, we don't have time to update the mission statement, but maybe we can begin to move in that direction. Because just to finish that point, we must, the mission statement in here says, recognizing the diverse needs of within our community. That's not the same thing as achieving transformative change. So if we are truly committed to transformative change, that bullet that's in here should be measurable and outcome oriented. I'm not sure how exactly to do that, but I would suggest thinking about that a little bit more. And then finally, the heart of the matter really is that equity criteria in funding and project contractor selection. is something to think about. So just creating equity criteria and in funding formulas, take it a little bit farther. Those are the sort of 3 substantive comments I have on the equity statement.
Thank you, Tom. Jane.
Hi, thank you. So going off of a little bit of what Tom said, I guess I have a question regarding next steps. Once this is finalized and adopted, is that how then is this to be measured for each of these 5 bullets that are presented on this in tracking that? Are there going to be plans that RCPA, SCTA puts in place to do that, and any kind of measurable tracking? And then lastly, while being adopted by SCTA, RCPA, is this something that you are hoping that possibly each of the jurisdictions will look at possible adoption within their realm? Thanks.
Great questions. And I see we also have Suzanne, James, and Janet, the rest of our management team on the line. So I'm sure they'll hop in as well. But I guess in terms of kind of our next steps once this is adopted, would really be looking at how do we implement each of those commitments, and what changes do we need to make in our policies, practices, et cetera. So for example, our hiring process, what changes do we need to make in that? And then as part of that would be, how do we measure that we're actually doing those things? So there's a lot more work to be done, obviously, to implement the statement, but that would be, in my mind, kind of our next step. Once we have the language clear and our board has approved it, then we need to move forward to implement. And then your second question about whether we would want this carried forward in each of the jurisdictions, that's not something that we've talked about. It might be something our board wants to move forward. Certainly it could serve as an example for other jurisdictions, but we've really been focused on developing something that the SCTA and RCPA can use to really ensure that we're living up to the our aspirations around equity and anti-racism. So.
Thank you, Tanya. And apologies if technical difficulties for a moment there. Carrie.
I'll be quick, but I just want to third the call for, first off, enormous gratitude. Really appreciate all the work and has gone into this. The equity as an outcome, and I think I said this before, but just we do the greenhouse gas inventory every 2 years. I think it would be great to have a set of social indicators similar to the LoCM scorecard, for example, that are health, equity, climate intersecting, and what are the top ones we want to commit to measuring every 2 years. And when we put out our greenhouse gas inventory, we also put out our social equity and human health measurements. And so there's a more accountability that RCPA is offering to the whole county for collective accountability towards these efforts. And I think that would be huge. In parallel with some of the other comments made, but really appreciate all this work.
Thank you, Carrie. And actually, we have started thinking about how could we develop some equity related metrics as part of the kind of our work around data and indicators. So definitely we'll be working more on that. Steve.
Yeah, thanks. I'm afraid that there is a huge difference in the carbon footprints of the wealthy and the poor. And so the equity issue here is really at the core of what's going on in the whole climate change area. Tough problem.
Thank you, Steve. Michelle.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the time or place to raise it, but I also was at the event yesterday, as I know others of you were. And a thought that came again to mind was just thinking into the future, probably not as far as we'd like to think, but climate refugees are likely to head this direction. And thinking about, it was interesting hearing the speaker discuss the demographic gap that we have now. And if we, and a gap that would be filled by younger people who would serve our community so well. And if we can't make room in our heads, hearts, minds, real estate, whatever for them, gosh, what are we going to do when there are other people that are coming and needing a safe place to be? And so I was just thinking of how is this a place to start talking about that and anticipating it? We're foolish not to, among other things. And so I just thought I'd mention it because I imagine it's something that we should be considering and being ready for. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Drew, do we have any public comment?
There were no pre-submitted public comments received on this item.
Thank you.
Maybe just a quick comment in closing, Ross. So really appreciate all of the comments and questions and suggestions, and just invite all of you, if you have additional feedback after the meeting, feel free to send me an email, send Drew an email, and we'll definitely capture your comments and ensure they're part of the summary of the feedback. So just really appreciate your insights and questions, and it's not too late after the meeting, so would welcome those later.
And next on the agenda, we will have the report out by jurisdiction, and I would, in the interest of time, ask for some brevity, but we will start at the top from Cloverdale. Jane, do you have an update for us?
Briefly, most of it is related to water within Cloverdale going on right now. We did get the $3 million grant from Department of Water Resources. And so working on that I think I had mentioned last time in upgrading those meters for our residents that I think is going to help with water saving and finding leaks. And then, so that's on the community level, as well as the progress that RCPA is making with Cloverdale on the Water Upgrade Save program to get that implemented. So really looking forward to having that happen within the community soon. And then nothing else to report. The city is still working forward on the projects for their own facilities and infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. And I don't believe we had anyone from Katati today. Is that correct?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Judith Newton, no worries.
My apologies.
No problem. I just got a few quick things. So we have ordered our electric police car. We have it being fitted, a way to become a police car from being just an electric vehicle. And we have chargers installed in our police parking lot for that. We're also working with Daily Acts on lawn conversions and also on the redesign of our lovely little local food forest. So those are my contributions.
Thank you, Judith. And any updates from Healdsburg?
All right, quick question. Judith, do you know when the police car is going to hit the streets? And I assume there's some kind of, I don't know, publicity or fanfare around that, because I believe it's the first in the county. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I don't know when it's taking a while to get it fitted.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll let you know.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I was in contact with Director Landman about that, asking him for pictures. So hopefully we'll get those soon. And updates from Petaluma.
Yes, we continue to do extensive outreach for updating our general plan, both to our residents and all of our different committees and commissions. And that's the biggest thing that I have to report in terms of climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. And Rohnert Park.
I waive my time to Julie.
Hi, yes, I have just a couple updates. One was already mentioned, and that is the gas station ban that was voted on in March. So that was very exciting to extend that memorandum. Additionally, they the council voted last month to update the local requirements for the electrical vehicle in the infrastructure training program. So that is going through currently. And then lastly, the other kind of big one is that this coming meeting, they're going to be discussing and directing an ordinance to provide, to prohibit the sales and use of the disposable food service, ware, and other products. So that will be coming up, is not currently voted on yet. The last thing, chatter in the community, is that they're hoping to be getting onto the council discussion about forming a climate commission similar to some of the other cities like Petaluma. And it's something that I would love some discussion or feedback from how it works, some pros and cons that I could bring back to those folks who are pushing for it. Because although I support the commission, I also have seen that it sometimes ties things up and maybe makes things like happen longer, take things to pass longer instead of going like directly to the council. So in the future, if we could maybe discuss that or offline have that discussion, I would love to hear pros and cons of a climate commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And moving to Santa Rosa. We have Kevin and Steve.
Okay, well, I'll speak first. I'm sure Steve will round out my comments with his own. But my assessment is that it's very slow going in Santa Rosa. The Climate Action Subcommittee asked the staff for a draft proposal on the con-gas issue, no further gas station issue. And there it sits. There's been no date set for the staff to return that draft proposal to the committee or to the council at large. And I don't know how appropriate it is or to what extent the RCPA can try and kind of put a bug in the ear or tweak this process a little bit. But I think that kind of thing needs to happen. And especially with this charter review process that's going on, that's so important for the city. It's basically the constitution for the city. I would hope that since the general public doesn't seem to be engaged in this process, that the RCPA, and maybe they are, could be providing some input on ways that the climate crisis could be highlighted or addressed or carved out in the city charter so that it's a relevant document. So those are my comments.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, except that the step forward is they now do have a staff person allocated. I don't know how much of their time they can spend on it. It seems to be very, very slow.
Thank you, Steve and Kevin. Moving to an update from Sebastopol.
Sure. So I'm chiming in from Sebastopol Climate Action Committee. We're anticipating the City Council will probably approve the new gas station ban this month, somewhere in there. We've been examining reach codes lately. Chances are, given the small amount of new construction that happens in Sebastopol and just the legal hurdles to establishing a reach code, we're probably going to focus on getting the city to gather their green building things a little more coherently in the city codes, focus on a Cal Green standard mandate, and then research a natural gas ban as an ordinance for new construction. We're finding in a lot of cases that new developments such as they are already setting fairly high standards. So far we're not having a lot of need to force the issue on the all electric code at this time. Last month we had a really successful compost to give away event. We distributed 80 yards for free in about 3 hours. We're planning another one in conjunction with Earth Day weekend and the festival and parade thereabouts. And let's see what else. Climate action framework in process, and other things in the wings, but nothing major achievement at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. And update from Sonoma.
Yeah, agree with what Kevin had to say about Santa Rosa. Things are going it's very slow going in Sonoma. We've had a turnover among city staff, city manager, public works director, and getting the new people up to steam is very slow. After a long wait, we finally got some bicycle and pedestrian improvements, new crosswalks, and eliminating one lane of car traffic to replace it with a buffered bike lane. A contentious hearing at the city council, even though the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, the RCPA, or the Transportation Agency, and the Sonoma Ecology Center all agreed that the parking protected bike lane, where the bike lane is next to the curb and the parked cars are next to the traffic, was voted down by the city council. But they did finally install the buffered bike lane, so it's still much better than it was. And the city has disbanded the commission I serve on, the Community Services and Environment Commission, and they're replacing it with a climate action committee. So we will see whether the climate action committee actually has any teeth and does anything more than rearranging the deck chairs on the tight sinking ship of our climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And Beverly, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention a very important thing. Tomorrow, Relief, in conjunction with the city, is going to be planting 150 trees in Wiseman Park. And this is I think it's a CAL FIRE grant that's helping us do this. And it's going to be our Arbor Day event, but it's our very first opportunity to do some massive tree planting work, which we hope to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. And moving to the town of Windsor for an update.
I'll be quick. I think I mentioned it before. There's a new sustainability coordinator. Her name is Catherine Gaber. Not sure if you've had a chance to meet her yet. She works part-time for the town, and she's also an environmental scientist and works as a consultant half-time. Very knowledgeable and terrific, working from her home in West County. And there's a new sustainability page up for the town. The gas station ban is going to the Planning Commission soon. We believe town council already supports it. And she's working, there's an RFP for the GHG inventory that should be coming up for a decision in April, later this month. And you probably all know about We Act, but one of you asked about, I think it was you, Julia, had asked about a climate commission, and she and I have talked a little bit about that, and the staff time required to support a commission is prohibitive for us. And so just having a really a communication team and a work support team of citizens is what we're looking to do at this point. And so I think that's my report for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And no other updates from Windsor. And then moving to County of Sonoma, Tom Conlon.
Great, thank you. I will mention that, yeah, I underscore what Matt said about the city. We really have stalled out completely with leadership changes. I would point out that in the county, we recently submitted some comment. I recently submitted some comments on the Amazon distribution facility. The vehicle miles traveled analysis there was really, really inadequate. And I was pleased to see that Permit Sonoma agreed and rejected that application. That's 3 strikes for that project so far. I was surprised, this is outside of my District 1 scope, but I was surprised to see the airport. There's a big hotel that was approved up at the airport by the Planning Commission. 85 feet tall, 8-story building. I think that makes it the biggest building in the county if it gets built. No, there's a taller building in the county. All right, well, anyway, those are some things that are going on. Senator Dodd's office reached out to a handful of us around Sonoma Developmental Center and opportunities for regenerative agriculture. They're continuing to work on SDC. Those are my updates. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And County of Sonoma Director Rabbits District. And moving on to County of Sonoma Director Hopkins District.
I don't have any updates at this time, but I will give a Petaluma update that electric school buses are coming soon.
Thank you, Carrie. And winding up here, we have RCPA update on activities. Tanya, do we have any last updates?
I think, BC, is there anything that you'd want to highlight from the activities report? Close to the end, but.
I don't have the report up in front of me. I think that my update earlier hit a lot of the highlights. I think the other thing that is worth it was embedded in the comments, or embedded in my presentation. But I just wanted to acknowledge the kind of the collaborative work that we have been doing and continue to do with the county's Energy and Sustainability Division, as well as with Sonoma Clean Power. Really, those two, that partnership around the building energy decarbonization, I think is it's a very strong relationship, and we kind of continue to figure out ways that the three organizations can work more closely together to really move the needle. So I'll leave it at that in the interest of time.
Thanks, BC. And number 9, any last announcements? Jane Elias.
Hi, I just wanted to put it out there that the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, BayREN, has the Codes and Standards webinar series, and I will post it here in the chat box. There is a whole series around newcomers with REACH codes. So if any of you are working with jurisdictions on the REACH codes, great series that's going to be starting up here soon. And if you want to forward that along, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any other announcements? And Drew, any last comments from the public?
No comments from the public submitted to me before the meeting.
Thank you. In that case, I believe we will adjourn.
And hope to see many of you Monday night at the workshop.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you all for your time today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.